Akon, the multi-platinum singer, songwriter, producer, and entrepreneur, has been quiet musically for the past few years, but he's been busy working to diversify his business into Africa. He's also gearing up to release a new album. In this in-depth interview, he discussed it all. Akon, welcome to you.
How you doing, brother?
You've launched an initiative called Akon Lighting Africa. This is to bring electricity to 1 million households by the end of 2014. And the data you presented shows that 2/3 of the population of sub-Saharan Africa is without electricity, and more than 85% of those in the rural areas lack access. How did this come to fruition, and what are you going to do to accomplish your goal?
Well, actually, the actions taken has already started. You know, we're already on the grounds installing solar panels in a lot of the sub-Saharan rural areas of Africa. We visited 9 countries, met all the leaders in those countries, including the Minister of Energies there. I cut a deal with CGI, which is China Ginseng International, who specialize in solar panels in China, and also have a finance group that's helping us to finance a lot of those projects, because a lot of the countries that we're in don't actually have the finances to, you know, adopt a project like that. And that's the reason why it's been so hard to get energy in those areas. So if the businessmen don't, you know, come forward and invest in there, the government really can't hold that nut alone, you know. So that's been the biggest obstacle, really, was getting it financed. So once we got with CGI, it was easier to finance it to where they can work and pay off in installments.
Okay, is this a profit or non-profit venture?
It's actually a profit venture, but ultimately I wanted to become in a position where I get into ventures that actually help the people, rather than just, because I mean, Africa's been one of them kind of continents where it's constantly just been resources been getting extracted from Africa for so long, and Africa doesn't benefit from it. And I think that's been one of the biggest angers and what's been causing a lot of the conflicts in Africa, because the people aren't seeing the benefits of those resources being extracted. So it creates conflict within the leaders and the people, and that's the reason why it's been so much conflict brewing throughout the continent itself.
Okay, so it is a conscious capitalism play.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, so it's charitable in the sense that you're providing access to people that didn't have it before. I see this. Why did you choose this issue?
Well, because first of all, the infrastructure in Africa is really lacking, and it's been so slow creating the opportunity for infrastructure to even be built, and mainly because there is no proper electricity. I mean, without electricity, you can't even begin to start infrastructure anywhere. You know, so the beginning to me was electricity. So we had to figure out how to find the solution to that problem in the first place. And attacking that.
And you're a businessman. I mean, you have your own record company, you've done a lot of production, you've signed artists, you've done all that. But there had to be a time where you said, you know what, I want to take it to the next level. Is this what it is?
I mean, because entertainment is not promised for sure. I mean, you're only as good as your last record, the way the entertainment business is set up. So you want to always have avenues and branches to where you can be able to create income outside of just the entertainment.
The electronic dance is really taking over. Did you envision that happening, and is it good for the music industry?
No, I mean, I think actually it kind of saved the creative side of the music industry compared to where it was going. Ultimately, I figured, looking ahead, I thought that would be the biggest next sound coming into the U.S., because ultimately at the time where it was hugely popular in Europe, it was something that needed to be refreshed here in the States, because the States was kind of out of ideas as far as where to go next. You know, because we always been forefront as far as creativity when it came to entertainment, especially with music. But we was at a halt for a minute. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you know, so even the record companies caught a big hit. You know, I mean, for a long time, everyone was financially in a bad situation. So ultimately, dance was that, I think, that savior for us. So, you know, when I connected with David Guetta, and we kind of broke him domestically, it opened the doors for Lady Gaga to be able to adapt that same sound with international spill. And I guess most likely paved the way, because a lot of people kind of adapted it afterwards.
Right. I want to talk about Guetta and Gaga, but I want to go back and make sure that we've established your background, because you're from Senegal originally, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and you spent a lot of time in Africa in the past 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I'm there like maybe 2-3 times a year for sure. And then depending on what's happening or what I'm doing from either entertainment or business standpoint will determine how many times after that I actually go. Because I'm still based in Senegal. You know, so between Atlanta and Senegal, those are my 2 home bases.
So you're spending a lot of time over there, but you obviously see the opportunity with the electricity business, but also what about music?
Well, music is what paved the way for all of this. This is what opened the doors for me to even have the contacts or even to be heard in a light to where things like the electricity project could be available for me, you know, ultimately, because when you are in a position where, even prime example, my popularity in Africa created the relationship with the leaders to be able to have that conversation. Because ultimately there's elections every other 4 or 5 years depending on what democratic area of Africa we are in. And the youth is really, of course, is what fuels Africa, because as you know, about 65 to 70% of Africa's population is youth. You know, because of the conflicts, a lot of the elders have been wiped out. So the youth is what drives Africa.
Well, your last record was big, Freedom. 2008 was when you released, so I'm assuming you toured after that.
Yep.
For what, 2 or 3 years probably. But you haven't come out with anything since then. And most people that don't do that, it's because the record didn't sell. In your case, you've been tremendously successful. So what's held you back?
Well, it's been a lot of things happening in my career. Ultimately, even within the record companies, there's been a lot of moving things around and kind of restructuring. So I was caught up in the aspect of the majors restructuring, and I didn't want to put out a record in a mix of their restructure. So ultimately I just had to adopt all the other things that I were doing and put more focus in all the other projects that I was doing, in a mix of creating and bringing in new artists at the same time while I wait for the right temperature, per se, for me to release my album.
Okay, so have you been working on music this whole time? I mean, if so, you probably have, what, 200 or 300 songs done?
Man, I think I've recorded about 125 songs for this album alone, and only 13 is going to make the album. So you can say I got about a good 8, 9 albums ready to go.
Wow, okay. Let's talk a little bit about Gaga and Guetta, because you were the guy who picked up Gaga when she got dropped from her previous label and really helped pave the way for her to make her big push that she made. And then Guetta is the king now.
Yeah, he's definitely the king
of electronic dance, even getting into some house music and things like that. What do you think of those two artists?
Man, I mean, first of all, I was just blessed to be attached and be able to be in a position where that opportunity came my way.
And what did you see in them that other people didn't see?
I mean, it's just raw talent. I mean, you just, it's really hard to explain, but when you know, you just know. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
you
not
just
everybody
know.
knew, though. I mean,
I know. That's why it's hard for me to explain it, because some things I don't understand how you don't see it.
It's intuitive.
I think that's the best word to describe that. Yeah.
Okay. How can record companies become profitable again? I know this last year they eked out a small, very small profit. I think like 0.2%.
And I think it's going to get smaller. You know, I think unfortunately, as the record companies, they're not thinking outside the box. They're using old methods of how they used to market, promote, and they don't know how to let that go. Whereas the time is changing. The youth are listening differently. They understand music better than you think they do. And you just can't fool the audience anymore. I mean, you have to be able to take a shot and take a chance. You can't break anything that you don't take a shot on. And they're out chasing the single. Records were built on an experience. Artists and superstars were built on the experience. When you thought about Michael Jackson, you didn't just think about Thriller or Beat It or, you know, Human Nature. You thought about the experience that came with Mike. From the performance to the mini movies to the concerts to barely seeing him in public, and you see him and chase him down that, you know, alleyway. That vision of Mike was going to be there today, and you don't know if you're ever going to be able to see him live again. We lost that. That doesn't happen anymore because the record company understood how to build superstars. And you can't be profitable if you just focus on a record that you can download on, I mean, for free on any music-related site anymore. You know, so, and I think they've lost sight of that, and they hadn't transformed into the digital age fast enough. Whereas the younger youth and the generation now understands how that works. Everyone has a MacBook where they have GarageBand and can make their own records. And you have YouTube where you can create your own videos and become your own superstar. So guess what? If you have that competition and yet the artist that's making you money don't have no extra leverage that you should be bringing to the table and dumping the money and the system that the average person don't have, you're just as popular as the most popular person on YouTube. If you just focus on one single record and a homemade video. See, back then we used to put a marketing plan, put money into artists and create a system that would make you want to say, I got to go pick that up, or I got to go see that, or what's coming next, and how will I be excited from it? They've lost that.
Where are things going now? Because, we could look at the industry and we could say there right now, at the end of the month, there are going to be 300,000 kids spending $500 for a weekend in Miami to listen to electronic dance.
Yeah.
So I don't see it going away, but potentially it's got to go away
Eventually,
soon.
right?
So what's next?
It's like rock and roll, when you think about Woodstock, right? At that moment where you never thought rock and roll would die. And people would sit there for a whole weekend, weeks, just in that same spot, don't even shower, just listen to music all night, 24/7. It's the same wave, As the generations change, the sound will change, the attitude will change. Their way of life is what dictates how the music flows. So if you follow the music, you will get lost. But if you follow the lifestyle, you'll always be in play. And that's the key.
So what's the next lifestyle cue then? What's music gonna sound like in a year? What's gonna be
in
hot?
a year? I'm thinking more cultural because I'm in a cultural space. So my goal is to bring Afrobeat into the U.S.
Okay.
Afrobeat is this real cultural, and it stems from Africa, but it's heavy in Brazil. It's heavy in the Latin areas like Cuba. Wherever there's rhythm, India kind of has a little taste for it. But I think it's going to be more of a bigger international sound than even dance music.
Okay, which is in line with the trend.
And it's the same tempo. And the beauty of it is that you can utilize electronic sounds within that same rhythm. And it mixes perfectly with today's electro and techno music.
Okay, and you've done a lot of travel. Like you've been in Africa, you've done a lot in Bollywood. I'm sure you're probably paying a lot of attention to what's happening in Asia with K-pop.
Oh yeah,
that
definitely.
phenomenon. So are you just kind of putting it all together?
In so many words, yeah. My mind's always been open. I've been a musical guy since a kid. My dad was a jazz musician. I grew up in Africa where there was no genre. You just loved great music. So that was one of the things I think what gave me the advantage even in the U.S. because I never paralyzed myself to just one particular genre. I kind of took a piece of everything with African melodies and just pasted it together.
What's great is that you can see your evolution. Because right now you're saying you're going to bring 1 million people electricity in their homes. And that's what I'd like to see rappers do. 50 Cent, he's another one. He's feeding 1 billion kids, right? But you guys didn't start out that way. 50 Cent was talking about getting shot 9 times.
Absolutely.
And you came out with convict music and talking about your checkered, past with criminal activity and all that stuff. Do you feel that you get misunderstood? Are you a good guy or a bad guy or a little bit of both?
Well, that all depends on the person who's representing that thought. Ultimately, as you grow, you start to mature. As you travel, you start to learn and you become more aware of your surrounding and how it affects the future. So you change according to what mind state and what about change you want to bring to yourself or to what's connected to you. Right. Ultimately, as I grew up in those surroundings, I know how it felt as a child to be in that situation. I know how it felt as a teenager to get in trouble and deal with that. And I know how it felt as an adult to be successful and understand what that feels like. So when you go through those channels and you divide yourself through partitions and understand what life could become for you and how you can attach or touch someone else to change their life so they can experience that, that becomes your main motivation.
You really become a businessman. I'm sure when you started out, maybe you were just an artist, but over time, how many artists have you signed?
Oh man, I probably signed about 20 artists.
Okay, and then you've done over 300 guest appearances on albums.
Yeah.
You've sold
a lot.
Millions of records. How did you figure it all out?
I was figuring it out as I go, I had the initial plan already set. When I was locked up, I created a 10-year plan of where I wanted to be in 10 years. And I accomplished that in 5. So what that ended up doing, it gave me leeway time of an extra 5 years to figure out, okay, what I'm gonna do within now and the next 5 years. And that's when I said, okay, now this is where it becomes business. Because the fun part has passed and I've reached a goal to where now I can open up the doors for the business that I wanted to do in the next 5 years that I have to start doing now.
Right. Do you think that, okay, you said you were locked up, but it was over a 3-year period. All the times you were locked up added up to about 3 years.
Added up to about 3 years, yeah.
Okay. So in that, has that stigma ever affected you in business? Have people said, oh, I don't want to deal with him because he was locked up?
Absolutely. Actually, believe it or not, that stigma even, I mean, it trails even today. Like, it's certain countries where even though I'm doing great things and it's clear that I'm a changed man, that my past still, you know, affects me even to getting into certain countries.
What is the crime that people are so offended by that you committed?
Concealed weapon, which was 12 years ago.
Which is illegal?
Wait, actually longer than that. It was 15 years ago.
Which is legal in some states now.
Which is legal in some states now, yeah.
Okay. So you, not a lot of really serious stuff, but enough to kind of give you, kind of brand you in a negative way.
Well, sometimes I think it's also to set examples that, and you know, I don't look at it like, oh, they should understand because I'm such and such who I am. I just understand that the decisions you make today will always affect you, no matter how successful you become.
Did it help you at all, though, in terms of the credibility, the street credibility that a lot of young people look for in an artist? Did that help you?
Oh man, that actually was, it helped me a lot, tremendously. To its credit, if it wasn't for that background, I wouldn't even been attached to hip hop. Because a lot of people till this day call me a rapper.
Right, and
you're
a singer.
I've never rapped a day in my life. But because of that background and the affiliation with rappers, when you look at Akon, you be like, okay, the rapper. But I'm actually a singer. I just happen to sing about what rappers rap about. So that's what connected me with hip hop.
Is it a sad commentary now? Would you like to see hip hop push beyond that, and will it ever?
I think hip hop pushed forward beyond what it was capable of, because hip hop is like a chameleon. You gotta understand where it came from you know, the parks in the Bronx and Brooklyn with the, you know, with the KRSs and, you know, and I mean all the way down to African Bambaataa to the Nicki Minaj's of the world, who's now like changing the game from a female standpoint. Because you gotta think hip hop started even as a male sport. It was a sport, like it was battling it was poetry behind music at one point. Then it became changing cultures. I mean, it went from fun to where then NWA came and made it gangster. You know what I mean? Then you have people like Kwame who came and made it creative and, you know, polka dots and start changing. And then you had Kid and Play with the haircuts. Big Daddy Kane with the coolness and the big chains. You know, like then it became, I mean, then it just started fusing into whatever was hot. Hip hop was attached to it somehow, as if it co-signed that to become cool. So it's not a hit record out today all the way down to pop records that don't have a hip hop verse just to make it cool. So it's definitely went way beyond what it expected to become. I think now it's to a point now we have to find its identity again, because now it's so vastly attached to so many genres that you don't really quite know what it is if you didn't grow up in that culture. So it has to be refurbished and explained again to what hip hop, the root of it really is.
The same thing can be said for R&B. The number one R&B artists right now are
100%.
Robin Thicke, Justin Timberlake,
Absolutely.
and Justin Bieber.
Yep.
What happened?
Well, what happened was the culture was switched. As the urban community, I would just like to say as black people, realized they got more comfortable because they start chasing the money. To them, pop music was where the money was. And as far as the pop culture, which are the majority white folks, they understood and still believed in rhythm and blues. So authentic. So as we were chasing the money, they chased the art. So they actually, believe it to their credit, inherited it and kept it going. So it's not like we can't always come back and really do it. It just sometimes it kind of baffles our mind that you have people like Robin Thicke or Justin Timberlake or an Adele, for instance, who sings blues just as good as the average black man or woman. And you're like, wow, she sounds amazing. And she's doing it well. You know what I'm saying? So it's really just a switch. You know, now, I mean, you got more urban acts trying to do dance music now because they're just chasing whatever they think is hot.
Whatever's hot now. And you can never chase what's hot now because you're late.
Absolutely, and it goes right back to the point. If you chase the music, you will get lost. You got to chase the culture and the lifestyle of it.
Bringing electricity to 1 million homes.
My man.
In Africa.
Literally.
Akon, thank you very much for coming in.
No,
and
thank you,
please
man.
keep us posted when you get that album done. I hope you come here first.
Absolutely, will do.
Thanks a lot.
My man.
And with Akon, I'm Lee Hawkins. See you next time.